All right, it's time to start getting into planning for our big summative that we're going to work on. So I want to talk a little bit about space and scale. What I want to talk about is how do you make something look that it's three-dimensional? There's lots of different tricks that you can use to make a flat image on a piece of paper look like it's three-dimensional. First off, we've got overlapping. So something in front of something, you automatically know that this object is closer to you than the object that it's behind. We can also do shading, so that's making something instead of look like a circle there. You can see this looks like a three-dimensional sphere. It's got shading on the sides. It's also got shadows underneath. So shading and shadows are something we're going to want to do. Placement is when you have multiple objects in an area, you can tell that there's space in between them. So it gives you a sense of a larger space than just a single object sitting there. You can do size, so that's things that are closer to you or big. As they get farther away, they get smaller and smaller. You really want to get fancy, you can use value and focus. That's just saying that something up close, it can usually be a darker or more contrasty so that it pops out and seems closer to you as opposed to things that are faded and farther off in the distance. And then last, the main thing we've been working on in this unit, linear perspective. So using those mathematical way of showing how large or small something can be in a space. So we're going to try and combine all 6 of these together, and we're going to make something that looks really great. It's going to be our big summative. So we're just going to start working and planning towards that summative today. So let's roll back in time a little bit. So here's medieval art before the Renaissance, before the invention of perspective. They didn't know how to make things go back to a single vanishing point. So you can see this painting we've got here. You can see it's well done. I mean, if you look at the face, it's a well done face. The hands, the feet. Look at that door. It's amazing. But there's something wrong with it. The lines are not lining up. The perspective lines. If I go from the corners of these buildings, I can see that nothing is going to the same vanishing point. So this roof's going to one vanishing point. The walls are going to another. The floor is going to completely another. And it ends up looking kind of wonky. And let's see. Oh, look at that. So much better. And why does it look so good? Well, because it is going to a single vanishing point. If I look at the tops of this building, if I look at the ground here, if I look at even the edges of the canal there, it's all going to a single vanishing point. So that's how we're starting to get things that look more realistic in a photorealistic, real kind of way. What they're doing there is they're playing with space and scale. So the sizes of objects must be in the correct scale in order to get a realistic space. Let's look at some contemporary artists that work with space, scale, and perspective, and hopefully they will inspire us when we come up with our summative plan. We're going to look at René Magritte, we're going to look at Petros Christomo, and we're going to look at Robert Tiernan. Here's a painting by René Magritte, and you can see he's doing a room in one-point perspective, but he's really playing with scale. Some of these objects are in their correct scale, like this bed or this bureau over here, but then other things are out of scale. They're much larger than they should be, like this comb, but you can see they're all painted realistically. Here he did the same thing. He did a room in one-point perspective, but then blew up this apple to enormous size. You can see he's also doing a few other things to really sell the three-dimensionality of this. He's got shading on the sides of this apple. This apple is making a shadow on the wall from this window, and it looks really, really great. Oh, look, there's another one. He's doing the same kind of thing. So it's like a rose that is completely out of regular scale in proportion and blown up to an enormous size. This is Petros's photograph that he did. It's pretty impressive looking. If you take a look at it, you got that enormous butterfly in there in that regular room. And I bet you're wondering, how did he get that butterfly so big? Well, it's a surprise. Actually, the butterfly's regular size. The room is not regular size. So he builds these little models, and then he plays around with them by putting something in there at regular size. And it looks, when you take the photograph, it looks like that object is completely blown up, even though it's actually that's actually the only object that is at regular size. Let's take a look at another one of them. So you can see those are just regular shoes and is a completely fake building. At first glance, it looks real and you're like, wow, that is a great looking sculpture of shoes. But then when you really look close, you can go, wait a sec, I can see the crack there. There's a little crack over there. But he's been doing this for a while. He's getting really good at it. Take a look at this one. Wow, looks like a real room with enormous eggs to make enormous omelets. All right, take a look at that. That is not Photoshop. You're probably wondering, how did he do that? Well, all he did was he made these regular tables and chairs. He constructed the chairs at super big scale. So again, the effect is, do you have tiny people or giant tables? Okay, so what are we doing for your assignment? Okay, so you are going to draw a room or an outside landscape in 1 point perspective. So we've learned both. We've learned rooms and we've learned outside. So it's your choice as long as it is in 1 point perspective. Okay, but you need to make something in your room that plays with scale in some way. Be creative. Could be making something big or making something really small. For inspiration, you can look at the work of some of the artists we talked about today, or you can try Googling scale art. Now, please don't just copy something that you see there. You are going there for inspiration. You do want to make something unique and original. Drawing must be in correct 1 point perspective. We'll do that on a large watercolor paper. Checkerboard floor is optional, okay? Now for today though, you're gonna start with a sketch in your art journal. I wrote down there, use reference photos, all caps with an exclamation point, which means I'm actually yelling at, I use reference photos. You really need to be doing that. If you decide to draw a giant rubber duck in a lake, you need to have a reference photo for that lake, you need a reference photo for that rubber duck, and you need to combine that stuff together, okay? Okay, so for today, let's get started working on that sketch in your art.